The Arizona sun was sinking low, turning the desert gold. When Luke Harwood rode home after a long day in town, the dusty trail stretching endlessly ahead of him, his shoulders heavy with the kind of weariness only the frontier could carve into a man, until he spotted two collapsed figures near a dried creek bed, lying so still he feared they were dead. Curiosity and caution warred inside him, for the Apache were known to travel in groups, and finding two alone was never a simple thing. But as he dismounted and approached, he realized the truth. Two young Apache women, barely in their 20s, clothes torn from travel, feet cut and bleeding, their braids tangled with desert thorns, their bodies trembling from exhaustion so deep it swallowed their voices. One whispered Nayeli before fainting, the other, Tala, held onto Luke's wrist for a brief second as if begging him not to leave them. And that was enough to make his decision. Luke knew the danger. Helping them might invite the wrath of their people, but abandoning them would be something he could never live with. Carefully, he lifted each woman onto his horse and carried them back to his isolated wooden cabin, constantly glancing behind him, half expecting warriors to appear on the horizon. Once inside, he set them gently on his own bed, the only bed in the cabin, and tended to their wounds with steady hands, offering them water, food, warmth, and safety. They ate slowly, watched him cautiously, but the fear in their eyes softened when they realized he meant no harm. Soon, sleep claimed them, and Luke stepped outside with his rifle to keep watch, sitting beneath the stars as night settled over the desert like a quiet warning. But before dawn, the ground began to tremble beneath him. At first he thought it was thunder, but the rhythm was too clean. Too powerful, hooves, dozens, no, hundreds. Luke stood frozen as a dust cloud grew in the pale morning light, revealing a massive formation of Apache, warriors 150 strong, charging toward his cabin. At their head rode a fierce warrior with braided gray hair, a painted chest, and the gaze of a man ready to kill whoever had taken his daughters. Luke tried to speak, but Iron Bear, the chief, roared with fury, demanding to know where Nayeli and Tala were, and his warriors tightened around Luke like a noose. Just as Iron Bear was about to give the order that would end Luke's life, the cabin door creaked open and Nayeli stumbled out, weak but alive, calling Adai, as she threw herself into her father's arms. Tala followed, confirming that Luke had saved them, fed them, cared for them, and given them his own bed while he slept outside like a guardian. Shock rippled through the warriors as Iron Bear's fury melted into relief and grudging respect. He stepped toward Luke with eyes no longer filled with rage, placed a hand over his heart, and thanked him not with words, but with a warrior's gesture of honor. Peace seemed to settle, but only for a heartbeat. Lookout shouted from the ridge, another dust cloud rising. This time it wasn't Apache. It was the raiders who had chased the girls through the desert the night before, armed, ruthless, and hungry for blood. Iron Bear barked orders, warriors forming lines instantly, arrows drawn and rifles loaded. Luke didn't hesitate. He dashed inside, grabbed his rifle, and stood shoulder to shoulder with the Apache, surprising even himself with the fire that burned inside him. The raiders descended in a storm of gunfire, bullets cracking through the air, kicking up dirt as the Apache charged to meet them. The peaceful morning erupted into chaos, war cries, rifle blasts, galloping hooves, swirling dust. Luke took cover behind his water barrel, firing shot after shot with deadly precision, protecting the right flank from being overrun. Iron Bear fought like a storm embodied, his spear flashing in the sun, his voice leading his warriors with the fury of a father reclaiming honor. Nayeli and Tala, safe inside the cabin, watched with trembling fear as the man who saved them now fought to defend their people. Luke spotted a raider taking aim at Iron Bear from behind a boulder and fired without thinking, dropping the man and saving the chief's life. Iron Bear looked back at Luke with a blazing expression. Gratitude, respect, and acknowledgement of a bond forged in battle. The fight raged until the raiders finally broke, fleeing into the canyons, leaving the Apache victorious. Silence slowly reclaimed the desert, interrupted only by the snorts of tired horses and the murmurs of warriors checking their wounded. The Apache gathered around Luke, not as an outsider, but as someone who had stood with them when he could have hidden inside. Iron Bear approached him again, this time with no suspicion, offering his hand in the sacred gesture of alliance. Through his daughter's translation, he promised that from this day forward, Luke Harwood would be considered a friend of the Apache, protected by their entire nation. Nayeli smiled at him with a warmth that traveled deeper than words. Tala nodded with gratitude shining in her eyes. When Iron Bear and his 150 warriors finally rode away with their daughters safe between them, Luke stood under the rising sun, watching the dust settle over the desert, feeling as though his life had shifted in a way he had never expected. He returned inside, sat on the edge of the bed where the two women had rested, and let out a slow breath, realizing that one simple act, offering his bed to two exhausted strangers, had changed not only their fate but his own. And as the sunlight poured through the window, he smiled, knowing that the greatest stories are born from quiet choices made by ordinary people in extraordinary moments. And to everyone listening, if you want more stories filled with courage, humanity, danger, and heart, make sure you subscribe to the channel. Your support lets these powerful stories keep coming. And trust me, what's coming next is even better.